I'm just really hoping I'm getting it right and I'm not really effing this up.
With a combined following of over 9 million, Louise Pentland really is one of the OG content creators. Louise was so open in this episode.
I didn't want to spend all my time 8 hours a day hating my life.
Obviously, a huge part of your career was really blowing up in your 20s.
Can I just say, we didn't call ourselves the Brit Crew. All the teen magazines had us on the front. People would scream like the Beatles. In my home life, I was looking after a toddler. I was going through a divorce. It was just bleak.
Do you think that blowing up on YouTube had an impact on you deciding to leave your marriage?
It's such a good question. No one's ever actually asked me that specific question. I remember thinking either I'm going to stay till she's 18 or I'm going to go now.
How did you start to think, despite all of the success, this is not for me?
Meet a man on Tinder and get knocked up. That wasn't in the plan.
You've massively blown up on TikTok.
It's my sprinklerinos. The best way to start a new app, a new social media platform, is to...
With a combined following of over 9 million, Louise Pentland really is one of the OG content creators. She originally grew through her blog titled Sprinkle of Glitter and YouTube channel of the same name that followed, and she was part of the original Brit crew of the YouTubers that took the UK scene by storm in the 2010s. She met the Pope, Kim Kardashian, and has 4 Sunday Times best-selling books. But behind the glamour and newfound fame, she was actually dealing with a divorce and parenting a young child as part of this very popular YouTube group where she was actually the only mother as part of this entire group and this new, I guess, phenomenon of them absolutely blowing up. Louise was so open in this episode. We really covered 1,000 topics. She was very frank and honest about her career, her relationships, the minefield of parenting online, managing her finances, finding new opportunities, and her approach to content. It's such a good one, and I really hope you enjoy it. I will say before we get into this episode, we do mention themes of childhood abuse. So if these topics are particularly sensitive to you, you might want to give this one a miss. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel very privileged and very honoured to be on your podcast.
No, well, thank you so much. I'm really excited. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to dive into. First of all, I always ask everyone whether you feel like at the moment you are more working hard or hardly working.
I would say hardly working, because if you do a job you love, it never really feels like work.
Oh, that's lovely.
That's the phrase, but actually it does sometimes feel like work. But mostly I would say no. Like when I think back to my old jobs, this is the best one.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. I talk a lot about how much of a privilege it is to really genuinely love your job and to feel fulfilled by your job and to get lots of things from your job that's not just the exchange of labour for money. But at the same time, I love my job and I fucking hate it this week in particular.
Not
so
right
that's my
now,
confession.
though. Not in this moment.
Oh, no, not this podcast. That's great. It's another culprit,
Okay.
Don't you worry.
Oh, I'm very sorry to hear that.
That's
If I can
okay.
help in any way, let me know. I'm at your disposal for an hour and a half, I think.
Well, perfect. Maybe we'll go into that later. So I'd love to hear from you a little bit about your childhood.
Unfortunately, my childhood isn't a nice childhood. It's not a lovely story of great supportive parents and everything nice. So career aspirations are pretty thin on the ground because survival was the aim of the game. So I was born to my mum and dad. My mum got ill when I was 5 with cancer and sadly passed away when I was 7 from the cancer. And then someone came into my life who was really abusive. It's taken me so many years to be even able to say really abusive. I would skirt around and say not very nice, not too kind. But the fact is she was highly abusive. And it's only as I've gone through my own life that I've really acknowledged how abusive she was. So that was from when I was 7. So mum died when I was 7. She died on the 20th of December and I met this new person on the 25th of December. So we buried my mum on the 23rd and literally less than 48 hours later I met someone else. And for 8 years I lived in a very volatile, violent household. So there wasn't a lot of room really to think about things like what would I like to be when I grow up, because you didn't even have space to think about what would I like to do today. Your only thought was how can I avoid more violence? So either there was violence towards me or they were having their own issues. They didn't have a great relationship. So I was just witnessing just a lot of aggression, I keep saying violence, but I can't think of any other language to describe it. So unfortunately, I didn't have the capacity to think much further ahead, but I knew that I didn't want that. I knew that this wasn't normal. I found it really difficult. I couldn't like pinpoint what wasn't normal, because at that age you just think, okay, this is how we live. And also it's worth remembering that abusers are really intelligent. So I was groomed to believe this is normal. You deserve this. This is how it should be. So then when that all finished when I was about 16, 17, I went to university, and now I'm so proud of myself. I'm like, wow, I achieved academically enough to get to that point. And when I got to university, that's when I was like, oh my God, life is so good. Like, is this what everybody's been having and I've been missing out on? Like friends and freedom and like warmth and laughing with people and choices that no one's going to like smash your face in for making. I was like, this is incredible. And that's when I started to think life is really good and I could grab this by the hands. And I've never really had specific career goals, but I've always been like, if there's an opportunity, I will take that gratefully with both hands.
Yeah, no, I really love that. And I think that, first of all, I have to say, I'm so sorry you went through that.
Thank
you. That is, I know it doesn't, it's always so difficult because all you can really say in that type of situation
I know it's difficult, isn't it?
But from your side, even in terms of like, all you can say is, like, thank you. And actually it's so much deeper than that, and you've been through so much, and to be able to even, like, when we talk about things like, what were your career aspirations as a child, like, that is so something to take for granted, the fact that someone as a child could even have career aspirations when there are so many situations that you might be in that is obviously nowhere near the top of your list to be thinking about at that time.
Yeah, to think about the future is actually a privilege, because if you're in a really dire situation, the future doesn't matter. You've only got the present. And if you're focusing desperately on like surviving the present, there's no space. I couldn't grieve my mother because I couldn't think about the past, couldn't think about the future. You just think about, how will I get through this day?
And I can't imagine how tough that was. Was there, from that point, obviously you've said that when you went to university, you start to realise, I guess, what I was experiencing wasn't normal, and there's so much more to life, and this is what I now get to experience, and I'm out of that type of situation. Was there a point that you started to unpack what you'd been through?
Yes and no. That's such a good question. No one's ever actually asked me that specific question. There were lots of little moments where I was like, that's interesting. But there was no one big moment until my eldest daughter hit about 6 or 7, because that's the age when everything kind of like started to go downhill for me. But at university, I remember I once went back to my friend Faye's house and her parents were like really nice. I was like, this is not how I think a household would be. And it wasn't actually, and so all through the years of kind of growing into my 20s, I was like, that's interesting. And it wasn't a matter of unpacking, it was just a matter of actually letting it sit in a box and just be like, that terrible thing happened. And I was just so relieved it wasn't happening anymore. I didn't want to deal with that. I was like, I just want to enjoy my life. I want to have friends. I want to have a boyfriend. I want to do all these other things. And I rushed into a marriage because I was like, what I'm going to do now is create the family I never got to have. I'm going to have a really lovely, perfect, calm, happy family. In the end, that didn't happen because we ended up getting divorced. But that was almost my career goal, was to recreate something I had lacked so much. And then from that, I was like, actually, I do want to do things. But it was when Darcy was about 6 or 7 that I was like, why would someone do that to a child? And looking at how small she was, I was like, no, I didn't deserve that. That no child deserves that. Because I remember thinking when I was pregnant, well, I hope that I'm not too violent. I hope that I don't hurt them too much. And then as soon as I had that baby, I was like, I don't want to do that. And it's not hard for me to not do that. I think that's what chokes me up, because I think it is not hard to not abuse children. In fact, it's very easy to treat them nicely and respect them and love them. Why did that happen?
No, I can imagine that that's very, on top of everything, very disorientating to have to learn, I guess, so much later than you would have liked to learn. A family should and can be loving. It can be supportive. It can be non-violent. And I think that, finding that out later, and as you say, especially finding that out when you're in the process of kind of coming into motherhood, is really really tough and disorientating. Like, for you to be... that time's already confusing enough. Like, it's confusing. You're pregnant, you're, about to have a family, and really thinking about like what you'll be like as a parent and how much it will change your life and all of that. And to be having essentially big realizations that are kind of, okay, on top of that, maybe I need to go back and think that, what I went through was so far from normal and so far from okay. And not just, I'm not going to replicate it as badly, like not going to go anywhere near, and actually no one should ever have been near that. I can imagine that's a big realization to have in your personal life.
It's a really beautiful realization when you look at your life and you're like, my life is not brutal. It's really soft and it's really gentle, and there's so much strength in that. My life is never horrible, and not just, I hope that doesn't happen to me again, I hope no one does this. It just doesn't, and I don't allow it to. And realising that actually, not only am I not like that, but I'm actually so strong that I can prevent that ever happening to anyone in my family is incredible. So as much as it was like, whoa, this is a bit of like, this is pretty messed up, suddenly you're like, there's a lot of power that comes from that. So you know that you are better than the people that came before you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that takes a lot of strength and a lot of redefining what you thought, that position would be for yourself. I want to talk about what you mentioned in terms of, having been through the situation, having come out of it, been to university, discovered kind of what you wanted from life, and really thinking, the main thing you wanted was to solve what you hadn't had, which was to have and to build a loving family.
Yeah.
You say that you rushed into a marriage, and I think that that's a really valuable and very honest thing to say. I think especially having, a social media presence, it's not an easy thing to say, especially when, you would have been online at that time, and you would have been that at that time where people were kind of seeing you every single day. But I am really, really interested, and I've spoken about this a lot on the podcast, about how experiences we have, especially as children, form the basis for the types of relationships we have. In that, there's this amazing TED Talk, which I talk about a lot, which is called basically Why You'll Probably Marry the Wrong Person. And it's all
I should have listened to that a while ago. By the way, I'm getting married again next year, so I might just read it. I'll just listen to it just in case. Check. Just in case. Still time.
But it's so good, and it's basically talking about the fact that, we all basically try and somewhat replicate, what we know. So we can deal with pain that we know, we can't deal with pain that we don't know. So how that manifests in most people is, and in, more, I guess, normal circumstances than you grew up in, was that if you have parents that are like overly loving and kind of overbearing and very, very involved, you'll probably go for someone who suffocates you a little bit because you can deal with that. Like, you understand that. At the same time, if you had very absent parents, then you're likely to go for someone who's very avoidant and probably not very present and all of that, because you replicate a pain that you know. And I always find that very interesting. And I think that I see it a lot in my friends. Like, I see it a lot. I'm like, I can see exactly why you've been for this person, and you go for this type of person again and again and again. Obviously, something so clearly for you was you wanted to build peace. Like, you wanted to build a loving family and have a kind of peaceful relationship. So for a lot of people, they go for the complete opposite of what they had.
That is exactly what I did.
Could you talk to that a little bit?
Yes. I won't go too much into the marriage, because it's not because I don't have things I would love to say. It's because it's obviously there's someone else and I don't want to give their life away. But for a long time, it was a really peaceful, happy relationship. And I will say the opposite of my violent, turbulent, horrible home life that I had experienced. And Darcy was a much wanted, much planned for baby. But I think if I'm really honest with myself, and it's embarrassing to say this because I should have known better, I was so glad that somebody liked me. My ex-husband was my first boyfriend, and I was just so glad to feel loved and cherished that I gripped onto that so hard. I dug my little claws in and did not let go. And I sometimes think I pushed and pushed. I remember pushing to be like, when we get engaged, it was me that would mention these things. It was me that would push for this. And I just swept us along in this thing that I felt like I needed so desperately. And then as we grew into our 20s, some people grow together, some people grow apart, and we grew apart. And I just realised we are not the right people for each other. We've both moved on and are very happy separately. But it will always be something that I carry in my heart that I feel sad and ashamed about, because I broke up Darcy's family. Even though I know it was the right thing to do for Darcy as well, I will always feel a bit sad that I made poor choices.
I understand that, and I understand where that feeling comes from. It makes me sad that you have that feeling, and I completely understand why, and I have no doubt that if I was in the same situation, I would feel the same. I can say, as someone who has divorced parents who at one point really liked each other, I do really, really, really strongly believe that when things aren't meant to be working, especially in a familial environment, it's not necessarily right to push it, because that can cause huge impact on the people.
I fully agree. That's why I left when I did, because she was 3.5. And I remember thinking, either I'm going to stay till she's 18 or I'm going to go now, because I can't have her grow up in when I say turbulent, me and my ex-husband weren't turbulent like my family home was, but you know, we would row, we would argue, we didn't bring out each other's best selves. And I was like, oh, I don't want her to grow up seeing this. I don't want her to see this version of me or this version of him. I'll leave. But I will just never be like, yeah, I'm not sad about that.
Yeah, of course, and that's well within your right. And I feel like as a mother, you so want to protect, and you want to, like, even part, you know, you've said yourself, so much of this was you wanting to create a beautiful, like, loving family. And I can understand why that doesn't feel the same when it's also not in the initial unit.
Be embarrassing. I had a massive wedding, made a big hoo-ha about it, put it online, wrote all these blog posts, I'm so in love, blah. And then I was like,
but you were
actually,
in love.
Guys, yeah, just all plot against it. Oh no. And then it happened so many times. Then I got a boyfriend after that, and I was so excited, because I was like, oh my God, at last someone fancies me again. This is really exciting. It was like a year and a bit after. I was like, here we go. And I was like, I'll keep this under wraps for a few months because I don't want to rush. And then I made a video being like, I've got a boyfriend. 2 weeks later, he was like, I don't think it's working. I was like, are you joking? I've just made a video.
You're on YouTube, actually.
You
actually signed a contract, so now you have to be with me for another year.
Thankfully, I never put him online or his face or even his name or anything. But I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to leave that video for a while before I make the no, we're not together. But okay, thanks so much for that. And then when I met Liam, I was like, I'm never saying anything until I know that you're not leaving me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've had that feeling, and I know very much how you feel. And I think that it's very, I don't know, it's a weird situation to be in.
Social media is weird.
Yeah. And I want to come on to that because obviously a huge part of your career was really, you know, blowing up in your 20s. And
yeah, so as I was getting divorced, social media was like off the charts wild. It was like this side of my life was like going very down and this side was going very up. And that was weird.
So tell me about how the social media thing even started.
Okay, so I worked in an office and I was the world's worst receptionist.
Love.
Yeah, poor Barry, my boss, who I'm still in contact with, God bless him, is retired now. But could he have picked a worse receptionist? No. No, he could not. My only job, this was my job spec. Ready? Answer phone, answer door. That was all I had to do. And even that, I didn't get right.
Inspiring.
Yeah. I am not a corporate girly. I learned that very quickly from the bottom rung of the ladder. Not for me, not an asset to any team at all. So, yes, whilst I was doing that, I would use my time really wisely and read blogs. And I was like, God, these are amazing. Because I've always loved magazines, like, you know, paper magazines. And then I found a blog and I was like, it's like a magazine on my computer that Alison, who wasn't my boss but thought she was my boss, can't tell that I'm reading at work. Oh my God, this is amazing. And then we moved down to Northampton. So me and Darcy's dad, this is before Darcy, this is when I was living in Liverpool, by the way, university in Liverpool, was receptionist, moved back down to Northampton, where I'm from, bought a house. And I was like, I'm going to make a blog about my house and doing it up because we bought this like rundown fixer-upper. And I was like, I'm going to talk about like making my own cushions and curtains. It was maybe the world's most boring blog actually at the time, but it took off, got mega successful, 35 readers. And one of them was Kathy from Germany. And Kathy said, could you make a YouTube video on this? And I was like, yeah, she probably actually didn't say it like that because she was German, so she might have done it in like a German accent. So imagine that instead. And so I was like, I could maybe make a YouTube video to kind of like talk about what I'm writing about. And then I might get a couple of people from YouTube will read my blog. So yeah, I'll do that. By this time I'd gone temping. And once again, I was the world's worst administrator. But I would go to these interviews and be like, yeah, I love administration. I'm just very organised. I love being in an office environment. No, I'm not. I can't. I'm terrible.
But I like having a job.
I like having a job, and I also would like some money to buy things.
And do up my house.
And to pay my now mortgage. And so whilst I was in my job, I would read these blogs, and I was like, I really want a more glamorous life. I really wanted to have more. I hated my job. I didn't want to spend all my time at 8 hours a day hating my life 5 days a week. And so I was like, maybe I could write a blog. And at first it was just fun. It was something to do to like alleviate how much I hated my actual job. And then I saw that people was like starting to make money. People had ads down the side. Remember, you could put those widgets down the side. So I started to sell ad space, and I was like, oh my God, I've made like £50 this week from
like
this.
my Meghan Markle widget.
That's right. Yeah.
For context, people listening to the podcast, I've accidentally updated my laptop and added a widget. And I thought that the only news was about Meghan Markle for the past week. And actually, it turns out I've accidentally added a Meghan Markle news widget. So every day I only get news on Meghan Markle.
But now you'll be very abreast with Meghan Markle's affairs.
I know, although very sad with the state of affairs of the types of news that comes in on Meghan Markle. Anyway, a wild aside. You had widgets. I have widgets.
We all love widgets. So I started doing that. And also at the time, I was like, oh, YouTube is quite fun. I'll keep doing that because I wanted to support the blog because I was like, I could sell more of these widgets. This would be amazing. As that happened, the blog was really boring. Like, bloody hell, no one cares about whether I've made a crap pair of curtains. No one cares. But people did care about the YouTube videos because I would sit with my laptop propped up on a upside down washing basket, turn my webcam on. It wasn't I couldn't edit. I didn't even know that editing was a thing. So I would just press go.
On your webcam? You filmed on your webcam?
Yeah, all my videos were on my webcam. And I'd just be like, hi, today I've been to such and such. And I would just tell people about it. And then I'd be like, okay, bye. Press the button, upload. That was it. I didn't even know that you could edit. And then a few people comment. And then I realised, oh, there's other people that are making these videos. Because at first I thought it was just people in America. I forgot that the UK existed.
Understandable.
And I was like, there's other people. And I got in touch with like other girls that were doing this. And I started going to events. Whoa, they were very exciting for like little receptionist me. I got the train down, got a goodie bag, which on the train back I was like almost feral about. It was all like very exciting. And as YouTube grew and I started making more friends and more connections, it formed like a group. Can I just say, we didn't call ourselves the Brit Crew. There was never a time when we're like, guys, should we all just like sit down? We need a name.
Workshop a bit of a name.
Yeah. Let's throw some names on the wall, see what sticks. Yeah. We didn't choose that. It wasn't a thing. We all just kind of like got lumped together. One, because we liked each other and we all got on, but also we all had the same management, which was Gleam, which RIP. My heart goes out to it.
At that point, you didn't actually need to have a huge platform to have a huge platform because it was right at the beginning of social.
So no one had platforms.
Yeah, if you had thousands of followers in any way, pretty big time. So can you just give me a little bit of context on how long it took to get from the point that you started to the point that you were going to events and what type of followership you were at that time?
Yes. So I started my blog in 2009. The first event I went to was in 2011 or 2010 because I was pregnant with Darcy. And then that was just like slowly trickling along. And I would say things got really big when me and another YouTuber, it was Zoe Sugg, went to this event that was like, I think it was Summer in the City, but I don't know if it was Summer in the City. It was something like that. And that's when there were loads of YouTubers. And I remember at that point, I think Darcy was like a toddler, like 1 or 2. So we're talking now 2012, 2013. And I remember I had about 60,000 subscribers on YouTube and my blog a few thousand. And I think I had Twitter. Don't think Instagram was even a thing, or it had just started. And I was like posting flat lays of katsu curries with sepia, you know?
Inspiring, yeah.
Yeah. And then like with the caption, yum. You know,
Hashtag, yeah.
Hashtag, no, didn't even know to use a hashtag. I'm still not editing, remember? But it was when I met like Zoe and Fleur and all of that lot, and they were like, oh, you know, you can edit. I was like,
good God.
Sorry, what?
Mortifying.
I'm sorry, what is this? And I'll tell you how I started editing. I did my first ever brand job, and it was with Body Shop, and it was for £1,000, which they just PayPal'd me, which now, can you imagine just being like, yeah, I'll PayPal you it. Yeah, okay, no contract, no, nothing. And the next day I went out and bought a Mac so that I could get iMovie on it, and that's how I learned to edit.
I love that. You know, when I started YouTube, I didn't realise that people spoke on YouTube. So much
Brilliant.
like your lack of editing, I just did like montages.
Nice.
Yeah, really, really nice. So I only started YouTube because on Instagram...
Nice little lookbook, maybe.
Not even a lookbook, far worse than that, not very sophisticated. It was because basically you couldn't do more than 15-second videos on Instagram. So, and I was posting workout videos. So I had to find a way to be able to post a whole workout, because there's only so much you can show in 15 seconds, I do have to say. And I would post these like montages of me going to the gym, but all you would see, the video would start, it would be my legs walking to the gym.
I still put that in videos. That's a good opener.
It's a good shot, for sure.
Yeah.
And then filming the whole workout, then legs, then I'd like wave at the mirror, bye.
Did you speed it up?
Some of it, yeah.
I used to like to speed up my reels so much that it's almost like you watch it like, now I watch back, I'm like, why didn't I just edit that down instead of being like, oh, I'll just speed that up times 10 to squeeze it all in.
Have you considered a job in video editing?
Yes, I'd be excellent. Then I consider why brands were like, we don't feel like you can see our products. Like, yes, you can for 1 millisecond, just there. We're talking about in.
I love that. So when did it start? So it's around this time you're starting to meet these other YouTubers.
Yes.
Talk to me about who was in the Brit crew and at what point it started becoming like a thing in popular culture.
Yeah, so in the Brit crew was Zoe Sugg, Alfie Days, Tanya Burr, Jim Chapman, Joe Sugg, Casper Lee, Marcus Butler, and then sometimes there were, I feel like I was like the outskirts of it. Like sometimes I was in, sometimes I was not in. But that was, I would say, like the crux. Oh, and Naomi Smart, Marcus's girlfriend at the time. So I would say it was around like 2014 or 15 that I started to think, this isn't just people that make videos for fun. Like I was in Shout magazine and all the teen magazines had us on the front or articles about us. We would go to these like huge conventions and people would like scream like the Beatles, and I would look and think, is that what? I'm like, oh, it's us, okay. And I just look, by the way, I look so gormless in all the photos because everyone's like waving. I'm like, why are they, who's here? Oh, it's us. And that was like very surprising, because you have to remember, in my home life, I was looking after a toddler. I was going through a divorce. I lived in like a little terrace house in the suburbs of Northampton, drove a second-hand bashed up Ford Focus. And then I would go to events and be screamed at and have like VIP treatment and be on the front covers of magazines. And it just was not marrying up. When you think celebrity, you think the whole celebrity lifestyle. But I was having a very normal, like, stay-at-home mum lifestyle, but then also this celebrity lifestyle, and it was really weird.
And so at one point did you start to make good money from it? I
started to make good money, and obviously good money is all subjective, but good money to me means you can pay your bills, you can pay your mortgage, and then if you want to go shopping and spend not whatever you want, but if you want to go and have a great big haul on the high street, you can do that. If you want to book a holiday, that's comfortable for you. That to me is
completely agree.
Yeah. So I'd say 2013. And that also is when I realised if I wanted to leave my marriage, I could, because leaving a marriage is hard, but leaving a marriage with no financial backup is extremely hard. And as much as I don't think money buys you happiness, money buys you choices. It's an amazing lubricant. So it allowed us to split our households quite quickly. I was able to rent somewhere for him to live and so for me to stay in the home, and to just get that going quite quickly, and not emotionally easily, but logistically easily. So that's when I know. So if anyone ever asks, when did that start making money? I know, because that for me is like a little pinpoint, like a life pin.
And do you think that blowing up on YouTube had an impact on you deciding to leave your marriage?
Yes and no again. Sorry to keep saying yes and no, but I think there's always two sides of things. It was never YouTube that made me want to leave my marriage. It wasn't like, I'm going to like quit this marriage because I'm going to be a YouTuber.
Married to my fans.
Yeah, I'm going to be married to my fans. I'm going to get myself a YouTube boyfriend. Woohoo. No, nobody wanted to go out with me from YouTube. Such a shame. It was seeing a different way of living and realizing that in some scenarios I was really happy, in some scenarios I really wasn't happy, and sometimes you don't notice that you're unhappy. If you're unhappy gradually, like in my childhood, if you're being smashed in the face every other day, that's unhappy. But if you're in a relationship that very, very, very slowly and gently has gone downhill, it takes a lot to make you wake up and realize. And I realized that when I was doing certain things and I was away and I was like, this makes me really happy. And that's when I was like, I don't think this is good for either of us. We're not bringing out the best in each other. I was my best version of myself when I was at events, when I was doing YouTube, when I was away, and then I'd come home and not be a very different version. So I was like, I don't like the person I am being.
And obviously as part of that group, the Brit Crew group, you were one of the only ones, if not the only one, with a child.
I was the oldest and the only mum, yeah.
Talk to me about how you navigated that in general, because those are very different time. I mean, I remember that time because I remember that's when me and my friends started watching YouTube. Like that was very much when we were like, oh, this is a thing and people watch these people, and it was very like pranks focused and like just like fun and like it was entertainment.
I never want to have ham on my face again. Like,
please,
so many, please,
never. But talk to me about how you navigated that, because I can imagine that's, you've obviously just blown up on this. You're basically developing a whole new career from what you thought you'd have. But at the same time, you've already said you're navigating a divorce. But on top of that, you have a child and are the only one as part of that who does have a child.
It was a blessing and a curse. The curse of it was I never felt fully part of the group because I could never just be like totally free. I could never be like carefree and like, yeah, okay, I can come and hang out for 3 days. I can go on that trip. I can do all these things because time was so precious and limited. But also it was a blessing because I never got swept up in things because I couldn't. Like you're always very grounded when you've got a child that's like vomiting up on you in the night. Like it's hard to like maintain that ego of look how special I am when you're like doing the nursery run in the pouring rain, So I'm glad of that. And also I think it made it easier to get out because motherhood was my main focus. Which now I feel like now the next topic is, why did you want to get out?
Yes, well, you've led me up nicely to this.
I've set that up well for you.
You're very good at this. How did you start to think, do you know what, despite all of the success that is going on here and all of the involvement in this like amazing cultural moment, this is not for me?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I didn't know it was a cultural moment. I don't think any of us really knew the scale of it until afterwards. So whilst at the time it just felt like a really exciting, like wild ride, have you ever been on an amazing holiday? It felt like I was just on this long, amazing holiday, and every time I thought, oh, that's probably the end of it, something else would come up that we would all get to go and do that was really exciting and fun. And as I loved all of that. I loved so much of it, and there was so much fun. Like I can't tell you, the experiences are just the laughs I've had, like the things I never would have thought that like someone like me would ever get to do were amazing. High highs, but also low lows, like being in hotel rooms far away from my baby, like texting someone that I'm breaking up with, like trying to arrange childcare, going, I don't know, you've never been through a divorce, thankfully, I hope you never have to, but like all the legalities of that, the paperwork, like it was just bleak. And I just thought, I can't actually keep up with this. I can't keep up with the speed. I can't go to London and do pranks and do all the trips. I
can't hide for 24 hours in a toy shop.
I can't hide for 24 hours in Toys R Us in a box. I just can't do it. I'm claustrophobic, Darren. Like, I can't do it. I don't want to put ham on my face. I've done the household makeup challenge more times than I ever want to. And as my home life was becoming more and more mature, as in, like, I was adulting pretty hard. I was like doing like transfer of equity forms and had a solicitor, and I was going through all this like stuff and starting to get dating. I was on Tinder, like meeting guys on dates and then being like, what do you do? And it's like
24 hours in Toys R Us.
Well, I make videos. What about putting Marmite on my eyebrows for fun? Like, I just thought this isn't me, and I felt really fake and forced. Not with the people. I really loved the relationships and the connections, and that was lovely. But the content I was creating just wasn't me. Like, it was really hard to be being two versions, and I never actually set out to be like a children's entertainer. And I just thought, all these teenagers are watching, and I could carry on making this content for them and being like a bit wacky and silly. But at what point are they going to be like, it's just a bit cringy and weird? If I feel cringy and weird now, give it a couple of years and they will, and then we're all just like, where are we then?
Yeah.
So I thought, if I want this to have any longevity, I really need to like nip this in the bud and change what I'm doing. And so I made this video like end of an era. I was like, so first of all, I started to slowly phase it out, but it was just really difficult. Sometimes you just got to be like, no, I'm changing. So I changed my username, which was Sprinkle of Glitter, to Louise Pentland, and I was like, guys, I'm divorced, I'm dating, I really want to talk about these things because these matter to me, these are interesting to me. And as much as I see the value in all the fun content that was being made by other creators, it wasn't for me. But I have no judgment for anyone that does make that, because I'm like, there is a place for that and there are people that should be doing that, but it just wasn't me.
And how did you navigate that transition? Because I can imagine obviously, it sounds like very much the right decision. And I think it's also one of those things that you can look back and be like, yeah, that was right.
It was
At
right.
the same time, you were earning a lot of money. You were, getting a huge amount of popularity. You're getting the main thing that people on social media generally aim for, which is lots of views and lots of kind of engagement and all of that. Was there a drop-off after the end of an era point?
Yes, there was. Which I thought there might be, but I was like, that's more than I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. Because at the time, I measured success in those numbers. I was like, oh no, I've now dipped in success. Now I don't think of success like that. But I remember we had a few brands that were like, oh, we don't want to work with her anymore. We had one brand particularly that was really angry and was like, you've changed everything. You've like changed your branding and didn't tell us about this. They were so cross. I had a teen magazine rang my manager and was like, well, we're not going to put her in this magazine anymore. And my manager was like, that's okay.
She will survive.
That is kind of the point. But they seemed really like, they were very cross about it. And I was like, okay, I didn't think people would be cross. So a big bunch of the teens dropped off, which completely understandable, because I expected that. I was like, just so you know, stay if you want to. I'd love to have you, but I'm not going to be making that content that you want anymore. So if you do want to go, that is okay. So a lot of them did go, which is completely understandable. But then I found my new audience, like your vibe attracts your tribe. I was talking about things that mattered to me that were as someone that was like mid to late 20s. And I found this new audience that was so engaged. And although it's always been smaller than that like hysteria of the teenage years, it's so much more real, because I'm like, you're my people. I love teens. They're lovely, but they're not my peers. But these people were my peers. And so I absolutely loved it.
And was there a drop off in income?
Initially, yes, because I wasn't making the content that was like serving teenagers, but then it picked up again really quickly, because actually, let's be blunt about it, the people that have spending power are not 13-year-old girls, it's 25-year-old women that have got a bit of disposable income, or mothers, or, women. So actually, it was a sort of a rough year, but it was a great move, because all the brand deals I had then, all the opportunities were much more authentic and also pretty massive. So thanks for that. I really enjoyed that, yeah.
What would you go back and say to the Louise who's like in the middle of all of the big height of success, but there's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of like the way you want to be seen? So you obviously like want to be seen as a peer and as an adult and as someone who is navigating big life things and all of that. And obviously you're kind of being perceived as an entertainer.
Yeah.
What would you go back and say to that Louise in terms of how to design the future that you want?
honestly, I would just go and say, don't worry about it. You're going to make the right choice. There's lots of things I've done in my life, like I shared earlier, that I was like, oh, I feel so terrible about it. But I feel like I made the exact right choice at the exact right time. It was 2016 when I was like, I'm bowing out of this, but all the best to everyone else. And I really do mean that, like all the best. But I can't do this anymore. And I feel like that was exactly the right time, because then I met Liam on Tinder, then fell pregnant, which was surprise, like meet a man on Tinder and get knocked up. That wasn't in the plan. And then like life got pretty busy with looking after this baby, this surprise baby. I call her my best bonus baby.
I like that. And I like that she has a theme tune as well.
Yeah.
That really makes me happy. So talk to me about that, because obviously you've got this audience. You're still very much on social media.
Yeah, things were going really well. I was having a great time. And then I was like, oh, I'm pregnant.
And so how did you deal with that with online, I guess?
I just shared it online. I was just like, oh, guess what? Plot twist. Here we are. So basically, I haven't ever had like a massively in-depth strategy other than just share as I go. So, and it was like, oh, I've got this boyfriend who's dumped me. Then I was like, oh, I'm dating someone else, and fingers crossed it's going to go okay. It's going to be all right. And then I was like, oh, I am now pregnant. Thankfully, Liam was on board. So I did a pregnancy test on my own at home, because I was like, I didn't even think I was pregnant, but I was actually on a shoot for Blogosphere magazine. Do you remember? They're called Be Creator now. And on the shoot, I felt really funny. And someone said, maybe you're pregnant. And it was like in a film, I was like, oh my God. Actually. So I might just check that when I get in. So every time I see that cover now, I'm like, she's pregnant. Did the pregnancy test. I was like, okay. We are with child. I will have to let Liam know. But I was like, whatever happens, I will have this baby because I'm financially secure. I'm a strong person. I can do this. And this is why I think it's so important for women to have their own money, have a stash. I know it's a privilege, but if you can, have a little stash of money for when your Tinder boyfriend knocks you up by surprise, like have it on, or any other emergency, just have that there.
Other emergencies are available.
Yeah, other crises are available. Not that Pearl's a crisis, but at the time I was like, okay. And then I told Liam, actually, I slightly lied to him because I knew that he'd always wanted to have children, but just it hadn't happened for him. He's a bit older than me. It hadn't happened. And so I messaged him. I was like, when you come home from work, can you bring a pregnancy test? Because I feel a bit funny. I thought, well, I need to have this moment with him. I can't deny him this moment. So I thought, I'll just never tell him I've already done a pregnancy test. I'll start this on lies, on a bed of lies.
Yes, love.
Yeah, brilliant.
Start as we mean to go on.
That's right. So did the pregnancy test, and I was like, you tell me. And I can't look thinking, oh no, it's gonna be pregnant. But I was like, you look. And he looked, he's like, oh, not pregnant. I was like, I was like, oh, so really?
There must be a glitch.
Yeah, I was like, really? Look again. And he was like, no, it's 2 lines. I was like, oh, I think that means pregnant. And he was like, oh, amazing. And he was so happy. I was like, well, that's a turn up for the books. And so at this point, I just bought a house for Darcy and I was like, if you want to move your stuff in and stay here permanently, i.e. live with me and raise this child, let's do it. And he was like, okay. And it bloody worked out.
I love that. I love how well that worked out. And I feel like
I love that for me.
Yeah, no, big fan of that. But I also think that it's such a testament to the fact that we spend so much time trying to plan things perfectly.
Yeah,
and you spend so much time being like, this is how I'm going to build a family, and right after uni and all of that. And then that not necessarily working and it very much like falling into place now.
I just got really lucky with Liam. Like we really, really complement each other. He's very laid back about things. He has his own career as a police officer. He's really passionate about that. So we never compete for like who's the biggest and bestest, but we're both quite driven in our own things. So it's like very easy to support him and be happy for his success, and he supports me and is happy for my success. And we're both very on the same page with parenting as well, which we just got lucky with. I think we're both pretty well balanced. I'm saying all this and then we're going to get married next year, but if we do get divorced, I'll come back on and do like an update.
And do like, it actually was never very good, sorry.
Yeah, actually. Like my Auntie Judith was like, never liked him. Even though I never liked him. I knew from the start, never liked him.
Exactly that. And talk to me about your parenting style, because obviously you didn't have an easy childhood at all. And I can imagine that has a huge impact on then how you very intentionally parent.
Yes.
What is your parenting style and how did you build that?
So I don't know the name of my parenting style. I would say it is closest to gentle parenting, but it's not. I am a gentle parent, but it's not gentle parenting in the definition that you might see in parenting books. I would say I'm a respectful parent. I really, really respect my children as people because I felt like I lacked so much respect, and so much of the abuse that I had when I was younger was because no one respected me. So someone abused me and my dad neglected me because they didn't value me. So I really let my children know, I value you, I respect you. That doesn't mean I worship them or they're allowed to do what they want or they can walk all over me. But if I demand respect from them, they should also be demanding respect from me, whatever the age. So it starts with that. Also, in terms of, so I parent with a lot of love, and rather than like force and punishment if something goes wrong, I'm more education and correction.
I do think that what you've said about respect is so, so true. I think it's like self-respect as an adult very much derives from respect given as a child. And same with self-worth, I think.
I was about to say and worth and value, yeah.
Yeah, because I think that like, I don't know, I think so much about how I want to parent my children and how much I want them to have that self-worth and that be given based on the fact that I have worth in them, and I tell them over and over and over to the point that they build that up themselves, because I think that that's actually one of the things that like as an adult I've realised that like no wonder I was so wishy-washy and all over the place and didn't necessarily like value myself if I, you know, didn't have that from a kind of, you are great, you are a very hard worker and you are a lovely friend and like all of these different things. I think that it's very hard to understand those things about yourself when you haven't perceived that from anyone around you. And the place you generally perceive that from as a child is your parents, your family. And I think about that a lot because I think that there are some people I meet who I'm like, I can tell your parents loved you a lot and they were so generous with their words and their love and all of that, and it really reflects in how they think of themselves. Like you can tell, I'm like, wow, I could not tell you a single thing about yourself. And I do think self-awareness is important, but like they have this unwavering sense of worth because it's been instilled in them that no matter what they do, they are still worth XYZ and they should be still respected in like XYZ way. And I do think, I don't know, I feel like it's just something I've been thinking about recently in terms of like, that's really hard to build on your own.
Yeah.
And really hard to be in a situation where you've like had to build that on your own. So I often think about that in terms of a parenting context.
What you'll do now though is like really drill it into them. And now I'm thinking like, okay, but I don't want to make you like really arrogant. I want you still to be like humble, nice, respectful people. So it's like finding that balance of like, okay, you are important, you are worthy, but you are not more important than someone else. You are just as important as everyone else. It's like, I go back and forth on it all the time, but I think it's generational because you know how now we don't say to girls, oh, you're so pretty, you're so pretty. I do tell my children they're pretty all the time because I do think they are the most beautiful children in the world. But I try really hard to find different language for them. Like, you're such a good friend. Or when Pearl will say something clever, I'm like, Pearl, that is so clever that you thought about that and worked that out. I'm so impressed by that. And try and find different ways to praise other than like, well, you're so cute. Yeah. Even though honestly, I want to squish their little faces in with my hands with love. So cute. Like when you see a cat and you're like, you know?
No, I completely agree with that. And I think that I actually saw this video the other day, no idea where I saw it, probably TikTok.
Was it on your Meghan Markle app?
Probably on my Meghan Markle legit. And it was basically, it was someone asking it like with a parenting expert or psychologist or someone and basically saying, you know, I went through XYZ. I so want to build a wonderful family for my children. Like, how do I ensure that this doesn't come through and this, you know, is what I'm able to build and all of that? And I remember the expert just replied, like, the fact that you're thinking about this means you're going to be fine. Like, the fact that you think, do you know what, I want to build their self-worth, but I don't want them to be arrogant and I don't want them to not be self-aware and all of those things. The fact that you think that means you're building that, because there's no world in which, you know, you'd see that arrogance and not be like, okay, I tell you you're wonderful all
rein
the
it
time
in.
and you
Yeah.
are wonderful, but that does not mean that person isn't wonderful and that you can talk to them like that or whatever it might
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. I mean, there's still loads of other little mess up things from my childhood that like I am now imprinting onto my children that I don't want to, but I can't help. Like Liam's always like, you've got such a problem. I have so much food in my house. My fridge is always so full. Things go off so quickly. We have cupboards full of food and Liam's like, you've got a problem. But it's because food was something that was used as a weapon as a child. And so now I'm always like, we must have, like, I can't just have like 2 tins of beans. I need 20 to make sure that like if ever we needed beans, we've got beans. So I still do those things, but I try not to let my storm wet my children. If you ever don't let your rainstorm wet someone else. I forgot what the phrase is. That's kind of gross the way I said that.
No, but
like try and look it up on Pinterest or something. It's a bit better.
We could deliver it in an aesthetic quote
Yeah,
format,
that would be really nice. Like star wipe to the quote over my face.
No, I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do think about it a lot, and I feel like it's always a balance of like being able to make sure that you don't impress things on your children that are so far the opposite of obviously like what you went through and end up having different negative impacts. But I think as well as a generation, like we are so much more aware of these things and so much more aware of like even parenting as a concept.
It's so much more resource. Like I have a phone in my bag that I can find out anything I need to find out. Like my parents were pretty terrible. My mum was lovely and loving, but you know, dying, inconvenient. But like they didn't have what we have now. Like ultimately our goal, and I think our goal is the same, is have children, don't fuck them up, have a good life. And we have so much more at our fingertips to allow us to do that now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that it's always so complex. And I think that the only thing that could ever make it more complex is also doing it online. So I do also want to ask how you find the experience of parenting online, because I can imagine that's a bit of a minefield.
Yes, it's a minefield online and it's a minefield in my mind. That's a bit of a tongue twister there. So the minefield online is probably the easiest thing to talk about, and that is everyone's got an opinion. Everybody, you could be the juiciest peach in the bowl and someone won't like peaches. Like you could say, I parent like this, and someone will be like, you shouldn't do that. So actually, I don't actually share how I parent very often. If you look through any of my socials, now years ago I'd be like very much like, I'm a parenting vlogger, I'm going to share my parenting tips, here's my hacks, here's what I think you should do. I don't do any of that anymore. I'm just like, I will stay in my lane, I'm doing me, you do you, and unless I think you're doing something extreme, you crack on. But the children online thing is something that I think about all the time. I have gone back and forth on this so much because it's so subjective. And it's such a sliding scale that evolves. It's like playing a game that the rules change every year and you don't quite know where the goalposts are and you are trying to be as careful as you possibly can. That's how I would feel like I'm living. And I've always tried to make choices with my children online that feel comfortable to us as a family, align with certain boundaries I've put in place, and also what will they think when they're older? So certain parenting things I won't share online, like, for example, potty training. I appreciate that that's a really valuable thing for people to share because I watched potty training videos, very helpful. However, I don't feel comfortable sharing talk about my children's potty training journeys. You'll never know how they did with potty training. I can assure you they are both potty trained.
And so am I.
And so am I, just about. I'm getting there. I just won't share it because I think, what will 30-year-old Darcy think when she is in an office perhaps and someone's like, oh, look, there's a video of you, that's the potty your mum bought you. Like, no. I put a heart on Pearl's face the other day on stories and I had a lot of messages being like, why are you taking her offline? I was like, no, but I know that picture of her was not objectively flattering. She had like some dinner on her face. I was like, I'm just not going to put that version of her online. It's my job as their guardian to make sure that either I don't put anything online or I put their best version online. I don't share them when they're having a meltdown. I don't share bad days. I don't share what they eat. I don't share their academic performances unless it's like amazing, like, oh, Pearl did amazing at something, I'll share it. But I'd never be like, one of my children has this issue. When I just won't, because I think that's theirs. And there's so many times I thought, oh, I really want to share this thing. I'm like, actually, that's not mine. That's theirs. However, there will always be people that think I share too much because they don't share anything. So it's so subjective. There's other creators, there's family creators that I look at their videos and I feel deeply upset and uncomfortable because I think you are putting so much of your, from a safety perspective, from like a moral perspective, from a maternal perspective, I think I can't bear it. I've cried over things I've seen online before that just I can't believe that's I can't believe you're doing this. But then people will look at me and be like, well, I can't believe you're doing that. You've shared Darcy's dance photos, you've talked about Pearl's birth. So that's something I play with all the time in my mind and think, I worry about it. I really worry about it. And I think I'm prepared for them to come to me when they're older and say, I'm not happy about that. And the first thing I'll say is, I'm so sorry. And the second thing I'll say is, every single choice I made, I thought was for the best at the time. And I thought I'd put the correct boundaries and like personal guidelines in place. And if I got that wrong, I'm so sorry. But I've tried not to. At the moment, they're both pretty happy. Like Pearl, she's 6. Darcy loves social media. And I've said to her a few times, like, are you happy? Do you want to do this? And she's like, I love it. She wants to do more. I have to rein Darcy back. So I'm like, babes, you can't put that on the internet. Or like, she wants to share a lot of like dance stuff. I'm like, not in that leotard. We're not putting leotards on, like, because she's 13, so she doesn't know. So it's really difficult because I now have what's right to do, but also Darcy being like, I want more, I want more, I want to do more, I want more. I'm like, I don't know what to do because we're the first people doing this. Like, who else is older than me and has children that have grown up and gone through it and that can guide me? No one. We're like at the forefront of this new age, and I'm just really hoping I'm getting it right and I'm not really like effing this up.
But I think it's one of those things that, like, if you're thinking about it and talking about it and willing to hold your hands up at points where you maybe don't get it right, I feel like that's kind of the best we can do, because you're right that, like, it hasn't been done before and everything hasn't been done before at one point. And sometimes it was a terrible idea and sometimes it was a fine idea. Yeah. And, you know, I think that there'll be so many people as well that watch your videos that it does really help them in XYZ way. And actually, if you didn't have that, they wouldn't get that benefit. And
does it help my children? That's what I have to ask myself.
But exactly. Yeah. But there's always both sides to it. And there's so many people involved that it's very hard to know at what point both sides come into play and what is the right decision. But it sounds like the way you think about it is probably kind of the best you can do. And whenever new information comes up, you can respond as needed to that information. But I can imagine what I would find really hard, I think, and what I go back and forth on a lot in terms of like whether I'll stay on social media or like when I have a family or like, you know, whatever it might be.
You will. You will.
But I think it's like one of the things that makes me think about that more is the constant opinions, like the constant opinions over like doing something right, not doing something right, like having to like should have made a better decision, all of that, because I feel like it's so intrinsic for parents as people, especially when like hopefully self-aware, to be able to actually go back and forth on things and be like, am I doing this right? Am I not doing this right? Like, should I have said that? Like, I have no doubt I'll beat myself. Like, I do this all the time at work. I'll have had a meeting with someone and it was, you know, it wasn't going to be a nice meeting and it was a difficult conversation. And I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that like that. And I should have said this like this. And like, maybe that would have upset them or made them feel like this. And I can imagine just with parenting, it's 10 times worse.
Yeah.
But how do you deal, I guess, with so many different opinions at the same time as you're trying to navigate just doing a good job of being a parent?
Yeah, okay, so to deal with the opinions, the first thing I do is filter what I'm reading. So I'll read the comments on my social media platforms that people are leaving for me, directly to me. I won't seek out anything else. I won't go on the websites that people can like share their opinions willy-nilly. I think if you've written it there, you've not written that for me. You know the phrase, someone else's opinion is none of your business? I really try and like think about that a lot. If I read something that I initially think of as negative, I'll look at it and be like, what is the message in this? Is this someone just being horrid, or is this actually something constructive? Because sometimes people are like, I'm not being funny, but blah, blah, blah. And you're like, first of all, no, you're not funny. But second of all, actually that's like that's useful. I can use that to my advantage and I can use that to like better myself or better my family situation. So thanks. But I think the key is you have to make sure that you are doing what you truly think is right for the right reasons. And when you're doing that, other people's opinions don't matter quite as much. If you're doing things maybe for the wrong reasons, maybe an amazing brand deal has come in that's loads and loads of money, but you've got to put your children in it in a way that you don't actually think is comfortable, but it's a lot of money, so you take the money. That's when you're on shaky ground. That's when like the opinions that would eat me up. You have to be doing things for the right reasons, and sometimes that does mean you don't take the job, you don't go to that event, you don't do that particular thing because it's so obvious, this isn't groundbreaking, but your family is more important than money, and success doesn't equal the most money you can possibly have. Success equals the most stable, loving, good family you can have.
No, I think that's a good way of I guess addressing it and being able to filter through like what things you should be listening to and what things you shouldn't. Over the last few months, you've had a bit of a, I guess, not career change, but a career development in that you've massively blown up on TikTok.
Late to the party. Hugely late to the party, but here I am. I've got my shots and I'm ready to go. Until 10 p.m, then it's bedtime.
Tell me about how that's been, because I can imagine having like a second blow up moment has felt quite in such a different stage of your life.
Yes, it's very cool. So basically, I thought I was too old for TikTok and I didn't really understand it. And everyone kept saying, go on TikTok. I was like, no, I can't, because I'm afraid of all new things. I'm actually a total
and the
melt.
Teenagers.
No, teenagers are okay because I've got a teenager, and also, fun fact, I'm a theatre chaperone, so I chaperone teenagers. Like teenagers, there's lots of teenagers in my life. They're okay. I'm just scared of new tech, which is ironic since my whole job, I make all of my money based on tech things. But I can't use tech. And remember, I couldn't edit. Didn't even know you could edit. Still, actually, can't edit that well. But I thought I'll give TikTok a little go. And I started trying it. I didn't really gel with it for at least a year. But what I did was I consumed it for like 2 years. I was like, the best way to start a new app, a new social media platform, is to understand it and to be a consumer of it and try it and you learn how it works. So I did that and I was like, oh my God, I love this. I loved the content on it. I loved the freedom. I loved the algorithm. I was like, the algorithm knows the inside of my mind. Like, it's witchcraft what it's doing. How does it know that I like so many things? I'm like, how does it know I like this so much? People squeezing soap. Yes. Have you seen it? They cut it all up into little bits and then they go and they squeeze it and it all breaks apart. Fucking lovely.
It does sound amazing. Yeah. You really sold it to me.
Yeah, it's when I found Polly Pocket Talk that I knew that it knew me. I was like, yes, hello. Anyway, then I was like, I could make some videos on here, much like the initial, I could make a YouTube video. Started putting them on. I thought, this is my fun platform because this is my doesn't matter platform. I make no money on here. I've got no brand sponsors on here. I can do or say what I like. No one cares. This is complete freedom. And then all of a sudden this audience came in and I was like, what is this? It was all the teenagers that left YouTube when I was like, I'm not going to put ham on my face anymore. I want to talk about grown-up things. They've now grown up and I'm still talking about my grown-up things. And they're like, hi, we're back. And I'm like, welcome back. And it's like I've got all my little chicks back in their nest and we're having a great time over there because there doesn't seem to be any rules. Like, don't need a thumbnail, doesn't need to be glossy, don't need to edit it. You just string bits together, say your things, put it on. And then all your people are there. It is my favourite app. And I went to a TikTok event and I was very excited internally. Externally, I was like this. But internally, I was like, woo.
And how has it felt, I guess, like having that, moment again? Have you felt kind of like, great, cool, I'm going to lean into this more. I'm going to do more and more of it. Have you felt a bit scared about it because of what, I guess, last time?
No, because it's not scary. The people are really nice there because it's my sprinklerinos, if you remember back in the day. It's those people. And if ever there is someone that's like a bit mean in the comments, they're all like, hey, don't say that about Louise. I'm like, oh, thanks, guys. Like, I went to the NTAs a while ago and I wore this lovely dress. And you know how people like do commentary on people's outfits? Mm-hmm. This one guy was doing commentary and he was like, this dress, first of all, that was someone else that thought it was Gemma Collins. Sorry, someone else was like, there's Gemma Collins in her blue dress. I was like, it's not. It's not. Never mind. But he was like, oh, here's Louise Pentland. It's giving mum. But he said it in like, yeah,
a derogatory
and
way.
I was like, oh, and I made a video about it being like, oh no, well, I am a mum and oh no, what could I do to not give mum? Because on a red carpet, I don't want to give mum. I want to give, I don't actually know what I want to give, but not like mum. Like mum, but not mum. There's a difference. Anyway, everyone was so nice. Everyone's like, you look lovely. And they were like, don't say that about Louise. She's our mother. And I was like, oh, thanks, guys. That's right.
Oh, that's so lovely. It feels like such like a full circle moment.
It does feel like a full circle moment. I was like, guys, this is wonderful. And I feel really like loved. And now I'm like some sort of TikTok ambassador. I was saying to Charlotte on the train, I was like, Charlotte, you really need to get TikTok. And all my friends at my age, like, I'm too old. I'm like, no, you're not. We're on there. Find us. It's very exciting.
Oh, well, I'm so happy.
I think everyone else found this excitement in like 2020.
No, I was the exact same. I was very late to it. And I still don't consume it. Which is a real...
No, you must.
It's a real issue. I must not, because I have real fixation issues and I will be found there 12 hours later.
Grace, have you heard of junk journaling? My God, there's women on there with stationery like you've never seen before. They are doing, imagine a flat lay on crack. It's incredible. Will you
send it to me?
Will I send it to you? Yeah, I'll send you like a full deck of all the junk. I've started so many crafts. I've tried so many foods, and I don't like to try new foods. My favourite food is beige, but I've tried other foods. I've even considered travelling, and I don't like to go away because I find it very frightening. I've even thought about going to new places because of TikTok. This is changing my life.
Yeah, well, I'm so happy for you. It sounds amazing, and it sounds
follow
like
me.
Big... Yeah, I will too.
Thanks.
Make sure you come join. Yeah, and my junk journaling.
It's at Louise Pentland. Thank you.
And so, tell me about the next stage of your career. Is there anything that you look at your career now and go like, do you know what? This is my career goal. This is where I want to get to.
Yes. Desperately clinging on. No. Well, actually, yes. Every year I'm like, if I could just get through one more year, that'd be so great. If people still like me for one more year. So that's always at the back of my mind because this is social media and it's fickle. I would, if I'm being serious about my answer, I would really, really love to combine social media and traditional media. So I already like dip my fingers a little bit in traditional media with like TV. I've got a column in Hello, BBC Radio Northampton slot, all those sorts of things. But I would love for it not to be social media and traditional media, but for it just to be media. I would love to be doing more things on TV, on radio. I love my books. I've got a new book coming out next year. So I would really like to just stay doing all the things I already do, but just sort of like grow them a little bit into those areas. I'm not very businessy, you know, like I know that you are so successful in business and so like strategic and clever with all of that. My brain doesn't really work like that. And when I try to, I get really stressed out. I did once try and scale things up and I had an office and I had staff and I was terrible. I was a terrible boss because I just want to be everyone's friend and I'm just a massive melt. So like, you know, when you said business, you have meetings with hard conversations, I absolutely would not have a hard conversation. I'm like, you know what, guys, we're just gonna have to fold the whole business. You know, sorry. Very sorry. I'll give you all my money. Just go away, never speak to me again, and let's never talk about this again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Goodbye. I'm going to go cry in the toilets now and shake for a while. Like, it's not for me. Like, business isn't for me. So all I want to do is carry on doing what I'm doing, maybe a little bit bigger, and still be happy.
I love that.
That's all I want.
I think that's very important. And I think that especially with social media now, there's so much aim towards the same things. Like, it's like success has to look like the same thing for everyone. It has to be something that all of us are trying to go for this type of thing, or all of us are trying to go for this type of thing, and that is what success looks like. And I do think that actually what you've said about like what you're good at, what you like, and what you can make money from, like the intersection of those things is an incredibly important thing to, you know, talk about and be aiming for, and to know that like just because success looks like that for that person, it doesn't look like that for me.
And you can choose what success looks like for you. I think for the longest time I was like, success is scaling up, success is saying you're a businesswoman, success is having the most money, the most brand collaborations, the most projects, the most different streams of revenue. And I tried lots of those things and some of them were really successful. I've got a property portfolio that I rent out, and I think I try to be like an ethical landlady. I've written 7 books, like all these things that I've tried to do, but some things I've tried to do and I've just been absolutely garbage at, and it's just not for me. And then I felt like a massive failure and been like, I've really let myself down, I've let everyone down, I'm not successful. But you have to ask yourself, what is success for you? And initially, if you go right back to childhood, my success was just to have a happy, safe family. And I have a happy, safe family. And if I can maintain my happy, safe family and I can provide for them, I can pay my bills and have a bit extra to have some nice holidays and get my hair washed every week and, you know, come to London and do nice things, that's enough for me. That is success for me. But that doesn't mean that I think that's the only form of success, because success, for example, my dad is a businessman, success to him is very financial. I'm like, yeah, good for you. Crack on. Success means something different to everyone else. And if we all wanted the same thing, well, first of all, that would make competition very difficult, but also be all a bit boring, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. And I think that it's how everyone needs to be looking at it. And I think it's often something that we discover along the way, rather than kind of at the beginning. It's very easy to be like, I want to be in corporate, I want to be a, you know, business owner, I want to be XYZ, and actually really being like, okay, cool, do you like the 5 things that that's made up of every single day, is important and not done enough. And I don't think it's something I did.
If we had Barry on the line, he'd be like, corporate's not for Louise.
That would have been helpful from day one.
He should have said that in the interview, shouldn't he? He should have been like, you don't strike me as a corporate girly. You know, every day I would try and match my eyeshadow to my cardigan colour, and I felt like I was really smashing life.
See, I think that's actually a very important part of corporate life. You would have smashed TikTok at that time, let me tell you.
Oh my God.
Imagine you every day going, here are the cardigans and eyeshadows I've worn this week.
Yeah, and I went bold with a lot of those choices because I was on the front desk. I had that desk with the little glass bit. Yeah, because I was the face of the business.
Love.
Yeah, it was a construction firm, so it wasn't super glamorous.
But you looked glamorous.
But I was there with my mint green eyeshadow, feeling like a badass.
So before we end, I'd love to know from you what the best piece of advice is that you've ever been given.
Oh my God. Okay. These are 2 little phrases that I always think to myself. The first one is, if you do what you've always done, you'll get where you've always got. So if you keep doing the same thing and getting the same results, that's on you. You need to change what you're doing. You have to keep trying new things, even though it can be very frightening, especially if you're just a massive melt like I am. You have to force yourself to try these new things. And leading on from that, the second thing is, fortune favours the brave. Sometimes you have to do the brave, uncomfortable things if you want that reward. And I do want those rewards. So I push myself out of my comfort zone, which is very small as it is. But you've really got to push yourself, and you can do it. If people like me can do it, and I'm not special, I was just a kid from Northampton that got bashed around a bit, came out of it and thought, I'll have a go at this. If I can do this, anyone listening can do anything that they would really like to do, but you do just have to do it. Don't sit in your office job and be like, oh, I wish I had it, but I wish I was that. Do it. Set up a YouTube channel, set up your floristry shop, set up whatever you want to set up, but actually do it.
No, I love that. I think that's great advice. And thank you so much. You've been amazing.
Thanks for having it. It's been like a little therapy session. I'm going to go and have a bag of Maltesers and a cry, just to let it all out. I've loved this.
I'll come with you. I need a bag of Maltesers and a cry.
I said a bag of Maltesers, not a fag. Did you think
I said a bag of Maltesers too. A fag of Maltesers and a cry.
Like, oh, no. Oh, no, don't smug.
And that's what we'll be doing next.
Yeah. Sponsored by... I don't even know what a cigarette brand is.
They're not allowed to advertise. They're not allowed to advertise legally.
Oh, that's why I've never seen any ads.
And that's a great place to end.
And thank you for having me, Grace. This has been really brilliant. Thank you so much.